Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. There comes a moment in everyone's life when you realize you've been giving your all to people who only notice when you stop. You reply instantly, they delay for days. You remember their birthdays, they forget your name. You show up with sincerity, they show up with silence. It hurts, doesn't it? But here's the truth. You don't need to fight for a place where your value should already be seen. You don't need to explain your worth to those who are blind to it. Sometimes, the most powerful response is no anger, no revenge, no words. Just peaceful distance. Because the moment you walk away silently, you teach them more than your presence ever could. Let's understand this from some short stories. The first story about someone who always gave. In a small town lived Aisha, the friend who always showed up. She helped everyone, birthdays, heartbreaks, deadlines. But when her father fell ill, her phone stayed silent. One day she realized something. She was the one holding every relationship together. That night, she didn't post a quote or send a message. She just went quiet. No anger, no blame, just silence. Weeks later, the same people who forgot her began asking, "Are you okay?" And for the first time, she smiled and said, "I'm better now. I stopped chasing people who don't notice when I disappear." Sometimes, silence doesn't push people away. It shows you who was never close. Another story is about the employee and the empty chair. Ravi was the first to arrive and last to leave. His boss never noticed his late nights, only his one mistake. One day, Ravi decided to resign. No drama, no speech. Just a quiet letter and an empty chair. 2 weeks later, 3 people were hired to replace his role. When you walk away silently, you don't lose. You reveal your value. Next story about the candle in the wind. A candle burned brightly, giving light to everyone in the room. But the windows were left open, and the wind mocked its flame. "You're too weak." The candle didn't argue. It flickered once and went out. Suddenly, the whole room turned dark. Everyone rushed to light it again, but it stayed quiet because it had already shown its worth. Your absence speaks louder than your presence when your presence was never valued. Next story is about the lover who stopped explaining. Meera loved deeply, but her partner kept finding faults. Her tone, her timing, her dreams. One night, she said calmly, "I don't need to be perfect for you to love me." He laughed and said, "Maybe you're just too emotional." She smiled, picked up her bag, and left quietly. Years later, he sent her a message, "I finally understand." She never replied. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your peace. Love never requires you to shrink yourself to fit someone's comfort. Another story is about the monk and the angry visitor. A monk was insulted by a man who shouted for minutes. The monk listened quietly. When the man finished, he asked gently, "If someone gives you a gift and you don't accept it, who does it belong to?" The man replied, "To the giver." The monk smiled. "Then I don't accept your anger." Not every insult deserves a reaction. Peace is the art of letting noise pass through you. Another story is about the tree that stopped bending. There was once a tree that bent low every time people hung their belongings, ropes, clothes, even garbage. One day, the tree grew tired. It stopped bending. The people got angry. "You've changed!" The tree whispered, "I didn't change. I just learned the weight I was never meant to carry." When you set boundaries, you're not selfish. You're self-respecting. The last story I want to share is about an old musician. An old violinist played every weekend at a cafe. People chatted over his music, never clapping. One day he stopped showing up. Weeks later, customers asked, "Where's the man who played the violin?" The cafe feels empty. But he had already moved on, playing in a quiet park where even the birds paused to listen. Go where your music is heard, not where it's merely tolerated. You don't have to shout to prove your worth. You don't have to argue to be understood. You don't have to stay where love feels like an effort. Walk away silently. Let your peace speak the language they never learned. Because one day, the same people who took your light for granted will search for you in everyone they meet and never find you again. Peace is not in walking away from people. It's in walking back to yourself. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs peace. Subscribe for more stories that heal and remind you of your worth.